We have the game of the week, the new SEC podcast game of the week, and that is going to be the Notre Dame Fighting Irish heading down to Texas and taking on the Aggies.
Oh yeah.
It's Mike Elko's return to A&M. I mean, he left A&M to go be the head coach at Duke, where he was exceptional, put on a great defensive showing there, ended up playing Notre Dame. And there's a whole bunch of, love triangle between these three teams that you can point a whole bunch of connections between. But in his return to A&M, he gets to play another school that he was the DC at many years ago, and that's the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, it should be a really fun one. And you talked about the love triangle. It's really, Mike Elko, as many know, maybe some don't, used to coach Riley Leonard. Mike Elko transferred, took a new job to A&M, and Riley Leonard transferred from Duke to Notre Dame. I mean, talk about an academic resume. He transferred at quarterback from Duke to Notre Dame. He was, some would say probably one of the best Duke quarterbacks in the history. It's him and Daniel Jones and maybe a couple others that I'm not familiar with, but he had a really great season last year before going down. He's probably one of the top 5 best quarterbacks that was in the portal. We talked about a couple today with Cam Ward probably being top 3. And for Elko, the question I wonder is it more of an advantage for him to know what Riley Leonard can do and how he plays, or is it more of an advantage for Riley Leonard to know how Elko runs his defense, considering that he practiced against it all season, right? Those are some of the big headlines, and there's a lot more kind of really to kind of digest and dive in there.
Yeah, and they were both at Duke, right? So, and this is nothing against Duke, but the resources and the weapons that you have on both sides of the ball when you go from a Duke to an A&M or a Duke to a Notre Dame is greater. Riley Leonard is going to have a greater supporting cast at Notre Dame, and Mike Elko is going to have different pieces to work with at A&M that he didn't have before. They did lose their powerhouse linebacker and Edgar and James at Texas A&M, so that'll be a position to keep an eye on. But they have a really strong supporting cast, returning cast, seniority there at A&M. And looking at them on paper last year, I think it was it might look worse than it was if you're just a box score reader, right? 4-4 in SEC play, but they recorded a net 74 yards. So they were winning the battle when it comes to yardage. They were just losing a couple close games that they had leads in or gave up a field goal at the buzzer. So if they can small tweaks and they can turn that around big time.
Yeah, and I think that the stat you mentioned around the yards is reflected in close games like with Ole Miss where they only lost by 3. And the season might have went different if Connor Wegman doesn't go down at quarterback. He's returning as a sophomore this year, and he had 16 touchdowns and 3 picks last year. So seeing what he can do week 1, A&M's number 20 in the nation, Notre Dame's number 7, and yet A&M is favored. So that says a lot in terms of what Vegas and what other, leading publications think about them. And so it'll be really interesting to see kind of how that quarterback duel goes out and really how they how the first couple drives go, like how they feel each other out as teams.
Yeah. And looking at a Mike Elko defense, they're adaptable. They adjust. His defense last year at Duke was only giving up 19 points per game. And when they played Notre Dame, the issue there that they had, and part of the reason why they lost that game is they were giving up 5 yards per carry. I don't think that the Notre Dame Fighting Irish is going to be able to capitalize that on his Texas A&M defense this year. They have too many weapons on the defensive side to stop that rush. It is going to be a chess match. I love defensive-minded coaches and defensive-minded games, and you got two in, Marcus Freeman and Mike Elko.
Yeah, and you talked about it earlier, right? It's the resources at Duke are different than A&M. They're different than Notre Dame. You're going to get bigger players up front on the offensive line and the defensive line, just given the funds, given the prestige of the program. A&M is a football school, maybe a baseball school now with the SEC or with the National College World Series appearance. But bringing it back to football, there's bigger resources at A&M. And you saw that in some of the key pickups he made on defensive line, getting Nico from Purdue, led the Big Ten in sacks. And so he could potentially give Riley Leonard nightmares in the game. And also I really think about just, where is there going to be an explosive player to show up for A&M? They lost Evan Neal or Evan Turner last year at receiver. He ultimately went over to Oregon. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of where they're able to fill that production in and, be ultimately see if they can pull out the win. So although there's a lot of positive changes, I think the Elko era will be positive. I'm going to pick Notre Dame in this one. I think, having a veteran like Riley Leonard, I would say he's going to be better than Sam Hartman. I think he just has, one, he's more mobile as a runner. I think he is a little bit sharper just from his football IQ. And you saw him win some really key games last year, beating Clemson week 1 in the season. And so I think he pulls us off at Notre Dame. But I do think it'll be pretty close.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I'm swinging the other way. If this game was in Indiana, I think the Fighting Irish would be favored here. I think Texas A&M gets that home field advantage under the night lights in College Station. So give me Texas A&M 23-20.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, I picked Notre Dame. I guess I got to give my score. I'm gonna take Notre Dame 28-14.
All right. Big hopes for the offense there. It's going to be a quarterback battle. Who's going to get the yards? Who's going to be able to convert downs? I think we see a pretty strong defensive showing on both fronts, but that's the game of the week. Game day's going there. We're excited to talk about it. So, and we're excited to debrief it afterwards. So
yeah, we're just excited to really have football to talk about. Like I keep saying it, but it's like, it's here. We have football coming up in a couple days, and then now we can sit down, watch, eat our best food, get in front of our TV, get in front of a bar, go to a game if you're local, right? If you're listening to this anywhere in the country, go to a game and really be able to feel it. So it'll be fun.